Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my Veterans to Success podcast. You probably know by now, my mission is to help 1 million veterans and entrepreneur business owners achieve the dreams, goals, and aspirations they deserve. That is why I created the Veterans to Success podcast, because I get to interview guys, men and women, who want to share their fascinating stories with you about their time before, during and after their time in the military, so you can benefit and overcome your challenges. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be mesmerized, astounded, and entertained. So, hello, Fiona. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Hi, Joe. I'm fine. How are you today? All right?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah. So, yeah, it's great to have you on the show. And what I want to come through as we're chatting is about the trials and tribulations. You've had a very interesting career. Yeah, and we had a chat. And it made me chuckle. It also made me a little bit sad at times because I didn't realise that went on. Although I was shocked, I wasn't surprised, and you're going to be telling us more about that. So tell me a little bit about your life before the military and what was going on.
Before, just kind of normal, the working class background, little town just outside Nottingham. Didn't really know what I wanted to do when I left school. My sister had gone on and done A-levels and university and stuff, and I knew that wasn't for me because I'm not a sit in a classroom learner. I'm a kind of learning as on the job sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't even know how I fell into it, but I ended up applying for an apprenticeship as a plumber, and I got the apprenticeship, and I went on and did the 4-year apprenticeship as a plumber, and it was where you went to the technical college where you did 2 hours on a Monday doing the theory, and then on an all-day Wednesday where we did, all your pipe fitting and welding and all that sort of stuff and heating systems and things. So yeah, and actually it was a bit weird because it was the days of YTS training schemes, if you remember that.
Youth training scheme.
Yeah.
I remember those.
So when I was on my college course, obviously, I mean, this was like the late 80s, so I was the only female on the course. And I was the only one on a proper apprenticeship. So they were all on £27.50. And I was on like the big £50 a week. So I was not just
as much as that. Well,
yeah, £50 a week was the best one. And then because it was an apprenticeship, you got your annual pay rise, and I got a birthday pay rise as well. So I was kind of living the dream. And yeah, and I loved it. I was on, like I say, I was on building sites, doing all sort of more industrial plumbing rather than domestic in houses. Which was again that made the instructor, he was always laughing about it because all the lads were doing domestic, all the little sort of fiddly stuff, and I was doing these huge big, gas and mortar maze on building sites. But yeah, really enjoyed it. But when the apprenticeship came to an end, the company then took on more apprentices because it's cheaper. They didn't have to pay big wages. So and then it was like what I was going to do then. And I remember I walked past the careers office and I went in and it was a Royal Engineer. And I said,
Sucker, one of my chaps, right?
Yeah, one of yours. Then I said, I want to join the army. I'm a qualified plumber. And he was going, oh, yeah, we had plumbers in the engineers and you can be a plumber in the army. And I was like, oh, amazing. So booked in to go and do the test. A couple of weeks later, did the test, and a lady came out and she said, oh, do you know what you're going to do? I said, yeah, I'm going to be a plumber. And she said, no, you're not, because you can't join the Royal Engineers. And I was like, oh.
And how did that make you feel? And by the way, I'm just going to catch up a little bit with you now because I know YTS scheme because I was on one, and you're only 21 because that proves because I was when I was doing my scheme, it was £19.50
Ah,
a week. So I wasn't on as much as you. You were making a fortune. And by the way, just because, right, so you're a young girl at this stage. How did it feel being like, I mean, in that sense, like a few years ago, it was a male dominated game,
yeah.
wasn't it, really? So how did it feel? And by the way, you were working in commercial plumbing and
Yeah.
industrial plumbing rather than domestic. So how did you fit in, and what sort of pressure did you feel under, if any?
Well, the little kind of firm that I worked with, they were all right. Obviously, when we moved on to sort of like building science, it was it was a bit odd for people,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and things, things were kind of done, but not too bad, if that makes sense, because I do remember getting quite I was quite shocked one morning when I went in, because we all had to wear our little steel toe cap boots, and we used to leave them in the port cabin on site, and obviously going to your trainers or whatever. And somebody had very nicely decided to urinate in my boots,
Oh,
and I
nice.
was like, obviously upset. But they did say, "Well, have a look, Fiona, what they've just done to the boy apprentice." And he was hung from the scaffolding, all kind of greased up and not dressed. So
All right. Okay. So
I was like, "Well, I'll go with the urine in my boots then." I'll just
yeah, I suppose that was a softer option, wasn't it? Really?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there was nothing. I mean, as an apprentice, I had to make the brews. If the brew wasn't right, they then would throw it more often than not over me,
Right.
which wasn't great. But I learned to make an amazing cup of tea really quickly. Do
Yeah.
you
That's
know
the
what I mean?
self-preservation. Yeah. Of
Yeah.
course.
So, but yeah, it wasn't anything outrageous or traumatizing, I'll be honest
Right.
with you,
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't as bad as you would expect it to be in the late 80s. So
Right. Okay.
yeah, not
So
that bad, to be fair.
well, that's good because I wanted to do a compare and contrast because of what we're going to be discussing a little bit
Yeah.
later. Right. So now engineers, you wanted to go in the Royal Engineers, Corps of Royal Engineers, which I was in. Now, I suppose because we chatted about this,
Yeah.
the only reason I could possibly think that you weren't able to join is because a lot of it, and I've worked with some brilliant women in the army, and I know that they've held their own against blokes. Um, Sometimes, though, when it comes to bridge building or some of the more physical things, that might have been perhaps a bridge too far to coin a phrase. So then, what did you go in instead?
So yeah, I ended up she went through all the options that I did have open to me, and I ended up joining REME as a vehicle mechanic and doing my trade training at CME down at Gordon, my
Right.
basic
Okay.
course kind of
Yeah.
down there. Yeah.
And how was that? And of course, there's quips about Royal Engineers and how it fits with Rini,
Yeah.
which you know about. Um, and how did that go? Your training?
The basic course, yeah, it was fine. And there was nothing because it was weird. My time when I joined, I did it was WRAC for a very small kind of portion of my time.
Yeah,
So
which
my
is the
basic training,
Women's Royal Army Corps. Yeah.
yeah. So
Okay.
my basic training was Guildford
Yeah.
as WRAC. But we then went REME attached. So even though,
Okay.
had, but then we got, I think I was only probably about 9 months, and then we all got recapped by anyway because WRC was disbanded.
Yeah.
So then going at CME was nothing kind of, yeah, we just did the basic course. And I wasn't the first one, do you know what I mean? So a few female VMs had gone through on the course, and there was lots of female we had our, obviously, as you do, your own block and everything. And there was
Yeah.
armourers, electricians at the time, because that was a separate trade when I joined, and VMs. So yeah, it wasn't anything. And it was just normal phase 2 training. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But then at the end, when you get given your posting, the top student gets the first choice and, all that kind of stuff. There was a little asterisk next to my name and I had to go. And when I asked the instructor, I said, why is that? And he said, well, that's because that's the only unit that will take you. Because at the time, there's a lot of units not taking females for whatever reason, So, yeah. And we
And how did that make you feel?
I was a bit, I think, to be fair, I was a bit like, because I don't know, because when I got there, I wasn't the only female there. Do you know what I mean? And because basic training, there's women at every rank, I kind of, when you don't know, because you're just joining an establishment, you don't really know. I just presumed that there was women everywhere.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that I wouldn't have the same kind of options as anybody else.
Because that's unusual for you listening. The unusual thing about Royal Engineers and REME, right? REME, Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, you get attached to units. You don't get a whole REME unit posted. You get posted as individuals wherever a VM, vehicle mechanic, is needed. Just the same as engineers, we're graded as first our as combat engineer skill, then we're not usually graded as on our soldiering skills, because then it's our combat engineering skill, but then our trade training. So I was a plumber and pipe fitter in the engineers. So they would make sure that the unit had bricklayers, plumbers, architects, design draftsmen, carpenters, joiners, all of the things that you needed in a unit that could go and rebuild a village. So I see. So with you would go to a unit that needed a VM, a vehicle mechanic, but there was only one unit that would accept you because you were female.
Yeah, but then I suppose at the time as well, as a female, we couldn't go to tank regiments or anything like that, so they were off anyway.
Right.
So because at the time it was, I'm trying to think now. I was a UMech, because they split between A and B mech. So B a wheel and A is travel.
Right.
And then they went through a phase where you were mech, which was like universal, so you did all of it. But for whatever reason at the time, you couldn't go to a tank regiment or whatever. But yeah, so I ended up going to an air defence 12 reg. Royal Artillery was my first posting.
Okay.
They were in Dortmund at the time.
Okay.
But we had to get posted in three women at the time. They didn't send you to a unit on your own. I think it was because it was the first ones. And obviously very, very few females at a unit. So I suppose looking at now, it's a bit of a red flag. But at the time you think, they're kind of looking after you and you need to, with your little friends. Do you know what I mean? But you're naive in your 20s, aren't you? So
yeah. So it was a bit of a posting with a buddy system, with a protective element as well, I suppose. Yeah. And so you turned up at the unit, the support unit, and how did that go?
Well, yeah. I suppose it could have been worse and it could have been better, So we weren't kind of, some people spoke to us, some people didn't, some people, the actual regiment themselves, like I said to you before on our first exercise when I was working on, just, spanning away on a Land Rover, and the commanding officer came over and asked, how, because they go round, as you know, they come around and visit everybody, don't they? And he came over and asked how we were settling in, asked if I'd received my MFO yet. And I said, no. And he said, oh, do me a favor when you get it, don't unpack it because you're not staying in my regiment. But the REME OC, because like you say, we were attached. So, he was like, no, they will stay in my workshop. But what they used to do on the CO's praise once a month, the Sergeant Major used to put the three of us in the middle rank and we were behind very tall people, so the CO didn't know that he'd got females in his, on his crow's quest. So
okay.
hidden us away for a little bit.
So that was a very curling attitude. And by the way, if you're not sure what an MFO is, it's a moving forces overseas. So it's the box. All your worldly goods belonging
Yeah.
go with you. I remember packing those. It was interesting times. Doing your best to cram it all into one box, or maybe two if you were really fortunate. So we said, don't unpack your MFO box because you're not staying in this regiment, right? Okay. So that's sort of, now you start to see the red flag. And what, on that same exercise, what happened, or on exercises similar, what happened with, because I imagine, because of the way, well, I know that you were good at what you did because of where you went to, as we're going to discover shortly. What happened that made the possible red flag a red flag for you?
It's not on that one, but on, exercise, because we ended up staying, to be fair. Anyway, obviously politics or whatever, but we ended up staying in the regiment. But to begin with, we weren't allowed into the fit sections. We all had to kind of stay in the HQ element, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we were allowed to, we got put in, the three of us, went into separate fit sections. So, each kind of battery had one female VM. And then we was on an exercise, and, vehicle fault comes in, sergeant sends me to go. So I went, and the bombardier was like, no, you're not coming. What do you want? And I was like, I've come to fix it. It was a handbrake cable. And he was like, well, you're not working on it. I want a proper VM. And I was like, well, I'm a proper VM. And he was like, no, I want a bloke VM. And I was like, oh,
Right.
okay. So I went back, and the sergeant was like, well, what are you doing? Why are you back? And I was like, well, he doesn't want me to fix his vehicle. And he was like, well, I've told you to go. So I kind of bit of to and fro in. And then in the end, our sergeant was just like, well, we've sent Remy, he's refused it. That's it. So then, the next morning, everybody was all, lined up ready to drive off. And obviously, this one vehicle, wasn't fit to drive. And then the battery commander was going mental, shouting and, abusing the sergeant. The sergeant, he was like, you Remy just sitting around doing nothing. And he was like, no, Remy assistance was given. Your bombardier refused it, and it was a bit something like that, but it's like anything. The longer you're there, they kind of get used to it, sort of thing. So,
And what, and if you don't mind me sharing, when your sergeant stuck up for you, really, and stuck up for his unit, what happened then when the commander sort of stood back? What did he say to the guy, the bombardier who was in charge of the vehicle that was stranded and not working?
well, it was one of those, it wasn't really, he kind of took his side. He said, I can understand why you wouldn't want that working on your truck, but, it's one of those things,
On what that working
Yeah.
on your truck, meaning you being
Yeah.
that. Right, okay. So, and I bet you being so polite, I bet you there was some more colourful language that was used from the bombardier when he said, "I don't want you working
Yeah.
here." Right. So, thank you for sharing that. And um, that's that would have probably had some sort of effect on you. What did you think then?
Well, I was a bit, I don't know, I suppose going into it, I was a bit naive because I thought, because I've worked on building sites and you know what I mean, and they accepted it. So it's just going to be the same. But it wasn't. It was on a whole different level to begin with, to be fair. Um, and it's like first time, our first week there, when the three of us, yourself, you're centralized fed, you go into cookouts, don't you? Every single person in the regiment, junior actors sat in there. And when we walked in, the whole place just stopped and it went completely, you sort of hear a pin drop, everyone's up, and then they all just started doing peak snorting noises. So we just, and to be fair, we just walked out and I never went in that cookhouse again.
So, right. So, how did you eat then? How did you sustain
And just need
yourself?
to get something from the nothing.
Really?
Yeah, just easier, isn't it, really, to be fair? Never gonna start.
Yeah, that's shocking. That. So, and how long did that go on for? Do you think?
Um, well, like I say, I never went in the cookhouse again, so it was all right. But yeah, I mean, but like I say, people get used to seeing you around and the fact that you're still there. But yeah, there were some people, who never spoke to me. Some people who, kind of did your little bit of section eventually, and there were some good people. Don't get me wrong, not
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
everybody
Yeah,
was,
okay.
all against us and that, and it just it's just that then when you're there for 3 years and they get used to they kind of accept you, so then you're lulled into a false sense of security because you think, "Oh, it's all right now." But then you get posted again, and you go back to feeling like you get posted to a unit that again has never had a female in, or a section that's never had a female in. So so then the first year or whatever, or 6 months is just as hard again, and then it was just like a cycle in the end. So that every 3 years, I kind of just knew that they were going to send me somewhere. They were like, "Oh, we're never broken her. We'll keep
Right.
sending her to the units that's never had a female." Because at the end of the 3 years of our first posting, one of the girls, two of them, yeah, the other two, they got out, they left. And so there was only me left after that. So then my second unit was, let me see. Oh, that was a Remy battalion. And I went to pack section. Um, there was there was females there. That was fine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then after that, I went to up to captain to AH Farms tank transporters. And again, they had females working on there, but that was all right. That was good. That was probably my favourite unit, to be fair.
Do you like a bargain? Well, for a limited time, it's about the 25th anniversary since I nearly died while on selection with the SAS. You can get yourself a life-changing program called the Pathfinder Ultimate Success System. You can do this by visiting thetransformer.co.uk/the Pathfinder. Here you will discover the techniques, systems, and success strategies I have developed from my 37 years in business and 15 years in the military. These world-class resources are designed to help you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations you deserve. So visit thetransformer.co.uk/the Pathfinder to order your copy now. Oh, and by the way, if you have not transformed your life in some positive way after 12 months, then I will refund you all of your money. So visit thetransformer.co.uk/the Pathfinder now. Well, first of all, I take my hat off to you. Well done. I salute you because to get that, uh, I can only imagine, right, how that would be, because I know when I was getting posted that there was a little bit uh, trepidation, wondering what was going to happen. But to think that you had that additional pressure because you get posted and you're on your lonesome, aren't you?
Yeah.
You turn up in the unit with your MFO box and your kit bag over your shoulder, and that's it. You're there. So then, wow, yeah. So fabulous. So what happened? How did your career go then? Your promotion?
Um, and I know, I mean, obviously there was always that thing where, women get promoted easy and whatever, but I didn't get promoted any quicker than anybody else, even though there was always these rumors every few years there'd be a rumor come up that there was a directive that you had to have a certain amount of women in each rank by a certain amount of time. So if any of us got promoted, it was because of this really directive, not because of actually passing a course or,
Not because you were any good. You just
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
You just got it because you had a handbag.
Yeah. So it was kind of always that. But that's to be expected, do you know what I mean? And then, yeah, 'cause I mean, I think I didn't get my Lance Corporal at my first unit. Lots of blokes
Right.
did. I didn't, do you know what I mean? I got my Lance Corporal on my class 1, which is kind of just average. I got me full stew, I think, at my 8-year point, which is again kind of average, you know. But yeah, so and then would you get me sergeant? I think yeah, that but it was one I think as a corporal it doesn't really matter then because there wasn't that much well, there was still a little bit of, you know, people who don't agree with you getting promoted or whatever, or your position when you come on a course or things like that. And I never came top of any courses. I never came bottom. I was just, do you know what I mean? Did what I did. But yeah, and then when I got my sergeant, that because that was really hard because I got promoted when we were in Iraq on Optelic, and then when we came back, and I was a sergeant. I don't know. I think there must have been something where people thought that I just got my local sergeant for being in there. And
What on Optelic?
yeah. So that then when I came back and I was, still a sergeant, that kind of and in work I used to get emails from people all over the world, people I didn't know. Do you know what I mean? Just telling me why I should not be a sergeant and exactly what they thought of me being a sergeant. So,
so they thought, let me just get this straight. They thought you got acting sergeant while you were out at Optelic in Iraq because it just helped with the management of people. And when you come back, you should have been demoted back to a full screw corporal. And that didn't happen. So then you were getting emails and communications saying, what the hell, who do you think you are being a sergeant? Yeah. So that's really supportive, isn't it?
Yeah. Made it feel really special. And phone calls as well. Yeah, loads of abuse. And at that point, I just thought, you know what, I've done, I'm halfway through. I was over my 12-year point, and I was like, I can't be doing with it anymore. Do you know what I mean? We should have got used to it by now. So I went to sign off. And then it was only because the chief clerk at the time at the unit that I was at, a lovely lady, Frankie Anderson, she was like, don't sign off, Fiona. She said, we've just had some things come through for a posting for recruiting. She said, go, put in for the recruiting, and just so you'll be away from mainstream really for 2 years, they can all kind of settle down and then see what happens. Do you know what I mean? Have a break from it all. And I was like, no. But yeah, she managed to convince me to put in for Edinburgh and London. And Edinburgh was never going to happen because obviously recruited, they want you to be Scottish. Do you know what I mean? I get that. Yeah. But yeah, so I got London and went off, did my bits and bobs down at the recruitment school down at Bovington. And then but when I went, because you have to go, I don't know, with the Royal Engineers, you have to go for an interview, to go and be a recruiter. And there was a panel interview at Horse Guards, and went there. And at the final, they were like, have you any questions? They offered me the position, and they were like, have you got any questions? And I was like, well, Central London. And I was like, oh, so do I get, because there was a flats in Canary Wharf, and I was all so excited. And they went, we've just had budget cuts. You're going to be living in the Mexican Wellington Barracks. And I was just like, but so then a whole new level of kind of fear, really, because I was like, oh my God, I'm going into, a guardsman. I've never served with the infantry. And obviously, the guards have been around forever. And I was just like, oh, this is going to be a whole new level of the not going to, and I had to write for permission to the Garrison Sergeant Major to go be in their mess, everything. But no, it was amazing.
Was it?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. All the other recruiters, the AFCO London was amazing, working with some amazing people, and the job was really, really rewarding as well, But yeah, and just being part of the combined mess at Wellington Barracks. It was really, really good, really refreshing actually. That people just spoke to me just normally, so there was no kind of
Like you were a human being, which
yeah.
is really good. And you know, you may not realize, you may not appreciate this, or I know that you probably blush. The fact is that people who go to recruit units, it's because they're good. Because you've got to represent the army, or the navy, or the air force. So you've got to be good. And I suppose also you being in Iraq or not tell it, having that experience, because how testing was that at times for you being a sergeant in command of men and women of your unit? How was that? What did that teach you?
That wasn't no, it was a bit, but it wasn't too bad, to be fair. We were with the air corps at the time. And it was just, it's just one of those things where, you just got to keep the vehicles going and just doing your normal thing, really.
Yeah.
Because, obviously you've got force protection with you and stuff, but that's kind of it. I mean, there was one, there was only one where we, there was a vehicle broken down, and myself and the vehicle electrician were asked if we would go out and do it. And I had to go on a briefing, and it was some guys from Free Power, and we was all in the tent, and having a briefing and stuff. And it was like, it's quite an unsafe area, shall we say, where the vehicle is and everything. And everyone, was taking a briefing, and everyone was like, right, okay, any questions? And they all kind of looked at me, and they were like, have you not got any questions? And I was like, no. Why would I have any questions? And they were like, well, and this guy, this Power Reg guy, he turned around and he said, well, you're not a bit worried. And I was like, why would I be worried? I know me and Benny can fix the truck. You're doing all the other bits and bobs, so why would I be worried? And he was like, oh, right, okay. And they're all kind of looking, and I walked out, went back on the fixer truck, and Benny, the electrician, he was like, so, right then, boss, what's happening? And I was just like, I was like, we're going to die, Benny. We're not actually. I said, do you know what I mean? I'm all right. Single, no kids, whatever. I said, but you've got a wife with kids. I said, I'm so sorry. I said, this is going to be horrific. And we were just laughing in the end. Do you know what I mean? And we went out, and everything was fine, obviously. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it was just having to put that kind of front on in front of all these Power Reg guys and appreciate it. And then like going back, and I was just like, yeah, but no, it's all fine. It's just one of those things, as well. You just do your job, and you guys can fix the truck. So yeah,
and that's typical military. That I mean, like it's like the swan serenely swimming along the top of the water, and underneath the water, below the legs are going like billy o. So you're standing there, everything's okay, no problem. And then you go out to your colleague and say, we're going to die. So that sort of, puts it into perspective. So now you're in a recruitment position, and everything's going great, which is, I suppose, dropping a pen would be the nearest you get to being in a conflict zone with someone. Then, and and I don't mean that disrespectfully, by the way, because you've got all this background knowledge, and when you're speaking to potential recruits, especially females, what sort of behavior they're going to be subjected to. So how do you, and you mentioned that you had a lot of successes and it gave you a lot of reward. How did you sort of prepare the candidates or potential recruits for the career that they could have?
Well, central London obviously has its own kind of, so you would have people who'd come in and they weren't bothered what they wanted to do. They just wanted to get in, especially kind of young lads who it was like seeing all their friends going down a different path. And it was, why do you want to join the army? Well, I don't want to go to prison. And if I stay in around here, I'll go down that way, So it was a lot of that. But going into schools and things, it was good. But it was just sometimes it was just really good to see, how people just. Some people have always wanted to join the military, and yourself, you'd have worked with people whose family, their granddad was this,
Yeah.
and their dad was this, and their brothers and their uncles, and that's
Yeah.
what they want to do. And then you have some people who are just like, probably a bit like I was when I left school. They don't know what they want to do. And so it was those, where you can talk to them about all the trades,
Yeah.
and the fact that when I was in recruiting, all the trades were open to everybody anyway.
Yeah.
So it was, and it was just nice to be able to see and match people and everything. And I used to love it. And it's so nice when they get accepted, and, and every now and again, not all the time, but you would just get the odd email back from someone who'd finished basic training or whatever, do you know what I mean? And then we'd keep in touch.
Right.
And, and it's when you have the people who come in, I think the most rewarding ones are the ones, or maybe, they may not have got the score they wanted for their trade, or they may not have the fitness or whatever, and they go away and they genuinely do come back 6 months or a year later, and they put the work in and put the effort in, and that they're going to go up and be fine, So yeah, I just loved it. It was really, and also as well doing, I met my husband while I was recruiting there as well. So
Great.
so, when we left London, I went as a bit of a tipped up as a bit of a bitter and twisted kind of, this is a kind of make or break person. If it doesn't work, I'm going to leave. And left married and pregnant, So
That's a bit of a turn now, no?
yeah, it was. Yeah, not expecting any of that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic comeback. So that leads me nicely into something that I always, it's the one question, I suppose, that is linked to another one that I really enjoy asking, and that's, how do you deal with failure? Because I mean, you've been kicked a few times, and sometimes like literally, which is what we didn't which is what we didn't cover actually, because you were subjected to some physical violence, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you deal with failure? What goes on in your mind? Because you've obviously got some great success models, and we don't need to go into the actual physical of the events themselves where there was physical abuse, other than to mark the occasion that there was. And how do you deal with the failure? What processes have you got?
I don't really know, to be fair. It's just one of those things where, I think it would have been different, I suppose. I think because a lot of people, if the military doesn't work out, they can leave and they can go back home. If you haven't got that relationship at home, and so you haven't got that safety net to go anywhere else, you've got to make it work, haven't you?
Yeah.
So it was kind of that for me. But I think I did have my own, and this made me laugh. I don't, if you remember the film Private Benjamin.
Yeah, I do.
I had
Was that Goldie Hawn? Was it?
Yeah. And so we're showing our age now, but yeah, I had a massive, I call it my Private Benjamin moment, when I was on my SMC, so your seniors course, that you do to get you qualified for sergeant. And I know some people, obviously, like infantry, they go to Brecon 6 months or whatever, At the time, the renewal one was 6 weeks, so that really is, but it was 6 weeks. And I remember, it was, that was probably the hardest thing. It was so, do you know what I mean? For the first 3 weeks, you're not allowed to walk anywhere, which is fine. Do you know what I mean? You've got all your kit on and everything. So, you're dropping weight left, right, and centre.
And by the way, that doesn't mean to say you've got to stick in one place. That means you don't walk, you run.
Yeah.
By the way,
Yeah. So, yeah, so the building in camp, and then you were out on the area or whatever. And they used to do, and yeah, there was 3 milers, 10 milers, 6 milers or whatever. And they were all the test things and stuff. And then there was on one of them, and you're running and it's on the sandals and stuff, and you've got the jet wagon behind you. And I was, and I was fit, but not the fittest I've ever been. Do you know what I mean? But I wasn't unfit, but I don't know, and over the sand and stuff, and I was falling back, and the jet wagon was getting closer. And then I just fell and it hit the tanker. And I was face down in the mud, and when it was my crime. And the jet wagon stopped, and he was just revving and revving and revving, and he just kept shouting, "Get in, Doris, get in!" And then, because if you got in the wagon, that was it, done. And he was like, "Doris, get in the wagon." And I just, and I was just so tired and so, and it was like one of those things. I'm either gonna lie here and just drown, and then it'll all be over, or I can drag myself up and sort my life out. And that was my kind of epiphany. And because I didn't lie there and drown, I didn't get in the jack wagon, and I don't know. And I dragged myself, and I was so far behind, but whatever it was, I managed to catch up, so I wasn't the last one going in. And even the DS, how was she got back up here? Do you know what I mean? And I don't know. And that was the whole mental switch for me. And then, it just, I don't know. I think that was where all the accumulation of what had happened before or whatever, it just, I don't know. I just got a lot tougher.
It kicked in. And by the way, on that course that you were on, that wasn't just females, was it? It wasn't female.
I was the only female on it. I was on it.
You were the only one.
The only female on every course.
And you didn't come last, which is fabulous. Because I know when I used to take guys out running, whether it was male and female, as a PTI, right, I could always tell who was going to jack. Right? But if it was a 10 mile, I knew pretty much by 3 mile who was going to jack. And I'd have been looking at you thinking, "Come on, girl, you've got this." Because you can just tell, can't you? Because the fact, and the jack wagon behind him, meaning the wagon that you get on when you jack it in, he was revving up, "Come on, Doris." And that must have made you think, "Right, fella." And then it just clicked. You might have thought something else on right, fella, actually. Yeah. So you got in there, and then that was it. You passed. So you're at the recruiting office now, changing all these young kids' lives from a life of crime to actually getting into the military and doing something good with their lives, because they know if they don't turn it. So that must be rewarding. What happened then? Where did you go to with your career, and what made you get out?
After that, and also I'm just not lucky, I don't think. They changed maternity leave, because at the time when I was pregnant, it was, you only got 3 months. And then the day I went on maternity leave, it changed. So you could have 6 months of, on full pay. And I remember, so then I phoned up and said, and they were like, "No, you're on the old contract." So I had 3 months maternity leave, and then back posted, and that's when I was posted to Aldershot then. Got posted there, did 3 years at 27, and then went to 10 QO General, where I got my staff sergeant there. And then from there, 2012, that was me, my 22. So I started my resettlement. However, I got offered an extension and me start major. So yeah, I went, for my last 2 years was at Arborfield, where they kind of closed down now anyway, Arborfield.
Yeah.
But that just made me laugh, that did, because it was phase 2 for really technicians at Arborfield. So my whole career I'd been a VM, and then they, send a VM sort of major in with little phase 2 text. But no, that was all right. That was good. It was all right.
So that's a fabulous career, and I think the turning point has got to be how you deal with failure. Is that face in the mud? Come on, Doris, that vehicle revving. So how many other times did you use that? Because I suppose that's a visual representation, an auditory, because you can hear the wagon as well. That's sort of the process now that you used whenever you got in a sticky wicket or something the same.
I just think that it just kind of gets easier. Do you know what I mean? And also as time goes on in the early 90s, there was lots of, physicality against everybody. You weren't there in the military, know yourself,
Yeah.
it was kind of the norm. So then getting into like, 2000s and stuff, it's not accepted. So then it's just microaggressions and just little verbal little things that I've heard all before. Do you know what I mean? By the time you've done over 10 years, there was nothing anybody was going to say to me that I had never been said before. So it was water off a duck's back then, and to be honest, it obviously still, it does bother you, and no one thing you're going to say, but I would tell myself it didn't bother me, but it is what it is. It's just the fact that, nothing, like I say, they weren't going to say anything that had never been aired before. And it was just, I don't know, the thing that used to annoy me the most was the arrogance that they presumed I had to prove myself to them. What about them proving themselves to me? That was the, you just normalize it, don't you, really, just to get day to day. And then you realize, and then, yourself, anybody, whoever's in any kind of employment or at the same place for a long time, you get institutionalized to their processes and their ways, don't you? So that's just kind of how it is.
No, I just want to touch on something which is a very important aspect, because when you got posted to the shop, you found out that you could have 6 months maternity leave. And then they said this is what you could have had. Now you're only getting 3 months. Because like, I'm a bloke, as you know, and I've got 3 sons. Right? I never gave birth to them though, so that's a totally different journey, right? And I care for my sons and I father them like a great father should. The fact is, like you mother them like my wife mothers my sons. That's it. To actually give birth and you're in the army, how did that affect your career? What source of arrogance or misogynistic behavior did you come across? If that's a strong word, misogynistic, I suppose it could be considered that.
Well, after giving birth, and obviously you have the health visitor come around and stuff, and she's checking on you and your baby, and I'm like, when can I go for a run? And she was like, you can't go for a run. You've got a rabbit needs too many details, stitches, whatever, She said, you can't go for a run. And I was like, but I'm back in work in 12 weeks. And I need to go for a run. And she was like, no. And she was like, definitely not before 5 weeks, and then it's 6 weeks. I was like, I need to go for a run. And she was like, no, I don't think so. And I was like, well, I kind of want to. But when I got posted, when I went back after maternity leave, there was nobody asked how long I'd been on maternity leave, and I didn't say. It was just kind of, because I presumed people would know, but they all presumed that took a year. So, because obviously the new contract was up to 6 months full pay, and then you went on half pay. So people were taking a year, but I didn't even know that the half pay thing was an option, so I just I had 3.5 months, that was it. And then I was back at work, and I remember when I was booking in, and I did ask at the gym if there was, any kind of PT program for people coming back off maternity. And the guy said, you should have trained while you were off and not sat on your backside watching daytime TV. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. There you go. I asked, and that's your answer. So
Oh,
yeah.
well, that was very constructive. Well, shame on him as a PTI, a physical training instructor, giving you that answer.
But yeah, and then it was a bit awkward because I was posted in and I was on, they had me down on the all but to go to Afghan. And so I had to then, at my initial, you know yourself when you have an OC interview when you're first in, I had to say, well, actually, I can't go to Afghan because my husband is already on Afghan training. He's going. And at the time, and again, I've been out 8 years, so I don't know if it's changed, but at the time, 2 serving parents couldn't be posted,
Right,
couldn't go on operations at the same time when your baby's less than a year old.
right, okay.
Because obviously you needed one parent to be looking after the baby. So, yeah, so that didn't go down very well. I wasn't going to be going. I'd be doing rear party because my husband was already on pre-deployment training and in the rotation. Do you know what I mean? He was going out a lot. Their unit was, they were already in the cycle, whereas my unit had only just started, you know,
Okay.
so.
Well, I mean, we could talk for hours, days,
Yeah.
especially on that. And what I can say is thank you so much for your service, because now we're going to move on in a second. We're just for me to recognize that you've had a baby, your husband's also serving. That must have caused some interesting conversations and interesting challenges. I can see you nodding your head. And actually, when I said I'm not sure misogynistic was a strong word, and you were shaking as if no, that's an okay word to use, Joe. Um, so right, you've reached the dizzy heights with all the crap you've had to put up with. You've reached the dizzy heights of the sergeant major, right? You've beaten blokes when you're running, and so I've gone, got you, mate. And, um, you commanded men, commanded women, being at the top of your game, helped get children off the streets and helped improve their lives. So, what made you get out and how did you transition and what sort of challenges did you have?
Well, I left because that was the end of my contract. Do you know what I
Right,
mean?
okay.
So, you know, did the 24 year, well, 23 and a half, I think it was, something like that. And then I did, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was leaving. When I was leaving, a lot of REME were all going to work at Jaguar and Land Rover at the time. That was kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to. I didn't want to go back because obviously sergeant majors aren't trade related. I didn't want to go back into kind of engineering or trading or mechanics or whatever you want to call it. I didn't want to go into that. Didn't particularly want to work with all men anymore. I was just like, I just want to work in a normal, whatever normal is. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't know what you need in the military, do you?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, because the military isn't normal.
no.
Like,
So yeah, you know, you don't really know what. But I genuinely didn't know what I wanted to do, and that was a bit of a kind of panic for me. You know, I did the CTW, the 3-day CTW, and like I said to you before, I used to just go home and in a big panic because everybody else seemed to be starting their own business, knowing what they wanted to do, and I was like, I don't know. But I had an amazing careers consultant, Stephanie Moore. She doesn't work for CTP anymore, but she was amazing. And I did lots of skills assessments, and she took me through every single job, you know, every single posting, every single job that I did in the military. And then she would be like, right, stop there. Your face lit up when you spoke about that. Right, move on. And, you know, and so she was like, right, when you were doing this, what skills did you use? And she really unpacked it for me. And at the same kind of time, I remember watching a documentary, and it was the fairy job mother. And it was a lady up north who worked with long-term unemployed. And she was so glamorous, you know, because a woman in the army, you know, no makeup. And, you know, this lady was so glamorous with her hair and her makeup and her nails done and that. And she was there in a room with these long-term unemployed people and a flip chart, and she was writing down all their skills and helping them build CV. And I thought, I want to be that lady. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
She was amazing. She was, it really, and so I was like, right, I'm going to go. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get into the employability space. So for my resettlement, I did a HR level 3, and I did Petals, which is now education and something is teaching. It's not Petals and Kettles and that don't exist anymore. It's now, I can't remember what it is, level 3 or level 4 in education and training. I think it is now, if I remember. So yeah, that's kind of what I did. And there was a role I applied for, an employment advisor at A4E, but I also, just in case, I applied for a job at JCB franchise, running the diaries of the engineers. And I did what many, many, many service leavers do. I went for interviews with both of them, and I bottled it at the last minute, and I didn't go for the A4E job. I went for what I knew I could do at JCB.
So you went for your comfort zone.
Yeah, I had a bit of a crisis of confidence, as so many people leaving the military do, and I should have really believed in myself and a bit more. But A4E then lost the contract and went bust and no longer exists. So maybe, Doreen, things happen for a reason.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. No, the thing is, you've hit on something there, and like I could let that comment go in the 10 seconds that it took you to say. The fact is that there's a lot of psychology going on there, isn't there? Right. So now you could argue that that was kismet or a bit of gut feeling, and you got it right because that company went bust, and if you had gone to them, you would have been out of a job, and you went for JCB, and you still had a job, right? So whichever one it was, what sort of struggles were you having going on inside your head? Because I mean, look what you've done. You joined the military. You came a, from a background before the military that you didn't go into that much. But what you did is the reason you stayed in the army is because you had nothing to go back to. So we can chat about that another time, but we don't need to go there. We're part of that. So you've gone from that to the military, taking the abuse. I know there's been some colourful language, right? You've been promoted. You're in command of men. You've beaten men on runs in the dirt and everything, on 5 milers, 10 milers. You're here. You transition great, and then you just had a crisis of confidence. What happened?
I think it's just, and it's that, who are you, out of the uniform.
Yeah.
And then I think also as well, it was like, because everybody leaving the military has that. You know what I mean? Some more than others. I think, the longer you've been or the more immersed you've been in. But also it was, I think for me personally, was not only who are you without the uniform, but who are you if you haven't had to pretend to be one of the boys for all them times, who would I've been. And that's what I really, really struggled with for a long time.
And how did you do that?
I just think of just a bit of time, really, I suppose. Because if you've been in there nearly, at the time, like half your life, it's not gonna change overnight, is it? Do you know what I mean? Your mindset and stuff. And but so really, in a way, the JCB thing was kind of like it was kind of like a comfort zone because you're still working with engineers, but I'm in the office with all women schedulers and stuff. So I get that bit, get to be able to, wear what you want, put your makeup on, whatever. I get my nails done.
Yeah.
But I'm still talking to male engineers. So it kind of, I stayed there for a year, and it did kind of, it helped me kind of transition out sort of thing. And then I went from there to Willie and Amy, that had the contract for the military housing, and scheduling engineers there as well. And then from there, that's when a role came up I saw advertised for CTP, and I just always remember how Steph Moore had helped me so much when I was struggling. And I'd always said, even when I was going through my transition and Ruth was the office manager, I had always said that I wanted to work there because they got, where I'm struggling and they'd really helped me. So I was like, I'd love to be able to do that for other people. So yeah, then I went and worked at CTP for 3 years. So yeah, and there's nothing, and I loved it. And I know some people, everyone's got their opinions on CTP, and talk about that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? I helped people the best that I could, and I loved being in that classroom. Do you know what I mean? With my flip chart behind me writing on it, so I did my little fairy job of the bit. I loved it. But 3 years, and I think as well sometimes a lot of people who've been in the military a long time, especially in corps, I'm used to moving every 3 years.
Yeah.
So 3 years was, do you know what I mean? And it was after lockdown and the pandemics and everything was going on with a lot of people, wasn't it? So, but then I went and worked at FedCap with supporting long-term unemployed, not military people with unspent convictions, everything, and that was really rewarding. But they moved, so and the commute wouldn't have been good enough, so that's why I didn't work there. So
Oh, yeah, and it's interesting you touch on the fact that everyone's got their opinion of CTP, and I suppose it's pretty much like the military. Like some people got on with you because you were a female, and then other people thought, "I'm not talking to you because you're a female." So, and then CTP, it's about people, isn't it? So it's not necessarily the rules or the structure; it's the way this rules and structure is interpreted. Does that make sense?
yeah.
And so you've gone to work with, gone over to work with people who, having difficulties, and then because of the commute, you decided to end that. So what happened next?
And then I worked at it was RFA, that's Forces Employment Charity. Worked there, and then through the power of LinkedIn, got approached by a recruiter, and now work on the Microsoft Military Affairs programs.
That's absolutely brilliant. So it's like a full circle: civvy, military, civvy, and then sort of military without the abuse, I suppose. if I may put it like that respectfully. So we've touched on how you deal with failure. I want to know the secrets to your success, and I know you're smiling now as if to say, "Well, what success have I had?" Well, I mean, the fact is, I've already listened. I know we've grown to know each other now. Um, what is the secret to your success? What would you put it down to? Do you reckon?
I don't know, because I don't see myself as, you know what I mean? It depends what you think of as success. Do you know what I mean? I'm just a normal person, I think. I'm just, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that, to be fair.
Yeah, well, okay. Let me make it a little bit easier, because success can be measured in money, monetary terms. It can be measured in career. It can be measured in spiritual relationships, all sorts of things, health. So if you look at it like that, no, I mean, what is it that drives you? Because I mean, you're a mother, a wife, a woman. What drives you?
Um, yeah, I don't know, really, to be fair. I think, I mean, go back to the success. I think I'm a success because my son's 16 and still wants to talk to me. Do
Yeah, and at 16 to have your son talking to you, that is a massive success.
Yeah, he'll still come, not all the time, obviously, but do you know what I mean? But he will still come out to town and sit and have a coffee with me. Do you know what I mean? Whereas when I was 16, well, from about the age of 12, 13 on, I didn't even speak to my parents. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that way I'm a success. That's how I kind of see it.
Yeah.
But anything else, I don't know. I just think, I don't know. Because I don't see myself as being a successful person, if that makes sense.
Right, okay. Well, I respect where you're coming from with, although you listening will probably have a little bit of a different opinion. So now we're moving on to, I want to look at social and business networks. How important do you think they are? And, for people who are either not military or transitioning from the military or have been out of the military for a while, how important do you think your social and business networks are?
I think you should it's because a lot of it is not what you know, it's who you know. But there's always somebody you might think of something, because if you've got a big, not a huge network, but you could, like you say, you could see a job posted and think, well, actually, I was speaking to a guy 3 weeks ago who was interested in that. And then you would message him. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you're just doing it all standalone, then there's nobody to message you to say that,
Yeah.
So it is, you just never know when you might need something, but it does kind of work both ways, I think. Don't, because a lot of people, they do it all right. You see, especially on LinkedIn, they're leaving the military or they're unemployed or they've just been made redundant and they're doing everything. They're applying for roles. They're reaching out to recruiters. They're sending, their personalized invites, everything, doing everything correctly, following up. But then once they get a job, they drop off. So they don't keep that network nurtured so that then, especially, in the current climate where you're seeing redundancies and layoffs, they're suddenly, a year later, they get laid off. They've ignored that network.
Yeah.
And they think they can just come back in and pick up whereas you can't, you've got to constantly, and you don't have to be on all the time. It's like, if you, I don't know, I think it was, if you react to 10 posts on LinkedIn and comment on 3 a day, you know what I mean? It should keep you enough. But just while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, just react to a couple of posts or follow a new company or send a personalized connection request to somebody who works at the company that you want, that you're interested in. And just little things. You don't have to spend 4 hours an evening on this, but it's just keeping everything nurtured, isn't it, I suppose?
And that's a great tip, actually. Little and often, which is a great tip. The other thing, of course, excuse me, is that it's not, you don't have to know everybody. The fact is, if you know a few people, you're not aware of who they know, and they can connect. You can't.
Yes.
So that's good. And you mentioned a few people, especially Steph Moore, and then you would have had people like your sergeant and the people who cared for you when you're in the military. Now the people who 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 care for you now. What do you think the benefit is of having a good coach or mentor?
I think some people don't see. I think now more people see the benefit of having mentors. Some people don't. I think in the military, old days, that old sergeant was always everybody's mentor. Normally in HQ, do you know what I mean? Who people used to go and talk to, and he was everybody's mentor, I think. And I think so many units had those, and they would just sit and listen and impart some huge kind of wisdom over the fag break area, and then just wandered off. But then
fag break early, and I'm there that term for a while. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So so even though it's not what you'd think of as mentoring today, it served exactly the same purpose. And even if you just have, a talk with somebody in, once you're in a company, I know a lot of the larger companies, they do professional mentors. And sometimes as part of your onboarding process, you get given, your person who you work shadow for like a month, who then becomes your unofficial mentor, because that's the first if that's the first person you connect with at that new company, they're going to have a special place in your heart, aren't they, all the time that you work there, because they were the person who trained you. So what I've always done is that one person, I've always then referred back to them. No matter how long you stay in that place, it's always that person you're going to come back to. So even officially, they may not have been given the label as, oh, that's Fiona's mentor. I've been their mentee, and I've always looked to them. And that's kind of what I would say, even if you don't be officially given a mentor at a place that you're working, just find someone that you're comfortable with, and they unofficially become that mentor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, of course. And the other thing, when you transition from the military, right, and now the skills you've got now and develop, because I suppose when you went to GCB, that was the apprenticeship for you, to be a civilian. Because like when you were joining up with Remy, the army spent a long time stripping the civilian out of you, building up the soldier, if you like. But when you left, they didn't strip the army out of building up as a civilian. So then you were in JCB. So how transferable do you think the skills are from military to civilian life?
I think, you've all, I think you've got so many, and it's always nice when you see the little light bulb moment go off, and you see they suddenly get how employable they are, and there isn't enough money in the world do you know what I mean, that makes that worth. I love that, seeing that when you're working with people transitioning out of the military, and they suddenly get it, and they realize how employable they are. That makes it everything worthwhile. But I think it's the ability to speak to anybody.
Yeah.
So I think, especially in the roles that I've gone into, because, a lot of it was like the first two jobs that I had was very customer service heavy. But the fact that, in the military, you're used to, I mean, I did instructor stuff, but even if you're not an instructor, from when you're doing your NCO training and stuff, and all the courses that the military sends you on, you get used to, you have that confidence. You're used to talking to people. So when you go out into the civilian world, you are comfortable picking up a phone and answering a phone, and you know how to answer that phone, because you get taught that in basic training. That's the telephone message. Well, I did. I don't know if they still do that now.
I didn't get much of that in the engineers, actually, but I mean, I'm sure it happens now. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it's just being able to do that, and it's the interaction, and even, I mean, I came a master, but it doesn't matter what you think of that person who, you put your work face on, and nobody ever, and so you just get on with, you can make connections with people, whether they're real or not. Do you know what I mean? It's a whole different ballgame, but you make connections easy with people and quicker, I think, because you can go in, and it's the ability to see the big picture as well, because I don't know, the military teaches you to do that, because you're always used to stepping in to someone else's shoes, either above, to the side, or then going back down. You know what I mean? You do all that. Everybody in a section can do everybody else's roles.
Yeah.
So whereas not everybody can do that, so you get the whole big picture view of everything. Whereas your work people are very blinkered and only won't go out the remit of their roles, will they?
Yeah.
I'm not saying every civilian's like that, but some are very.
And you're eminently qualified, having worked with CTP, and now the work you do. And you've always been about nurturing people and recognizing the skills. Because while you were saying that, I just processed back to in basic training, where we were taught the prioritization for someone who's injured, breathing, bleeding, breaks, burns, all those years ago. And we were sent into the ablutions, and there were people screaming, running around, and I had to take an assessment. I mean, I'm age 18 at this point. Take assessment of what was going on, and we noticed that there was someone not making any noise in the toilet cubicle because he wasn't breathing. And then there was mayhem, and we got it all under control, and we got top marks as a section. And that's the sort of stuff you get, isn't it? from a
Yes.
so even privates or sappers can still have that ability.
Oh,
through
definitely.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, and that's really good feedback. So the Columbo question is, oh, and one more thing. What's the top tip you would give to someone leaving the military, someone out of the military, or someone just having some challenges with life at the minute? Because goodness knows we're having some interesting times. What's the one tip you'd give them?
Um, I would say if you if for people leaving the military, go with what they want to do, what sport, find their why or what sparks joy and go for that.
Right.
Don't do everything. Don't go down the same path that everybody else who's leaving at the same time is doing. It might be a little bit harder, but if you can find out your reason, because you've got another 30 years of work. So if you want to find something that you're going to enjoy, and just, I suppose, for anybody who's going through, I don't know if you're going through anything, it's just, I mean, I'm my worst. I would never, I mean, obviously the advice is you should always speak to somebody, but I don't. I'm one of those people that I will deal with it myself.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, you know what I mean? I'll share the story with whoever. Do you know what I mean? But at the time, so yeah, take my advice, but I don't do it myself. I try and find somebody to talk to, and because it is a problem shared is a problem halved, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
And yeah, you shouldn't internalize everything. You should try and talk through it and find somebody who will listen to you.
Well, Fiona, thank you so much. That was so enlightening, and for sharing your innermost thoughts. It was brilliant. Thanks again, and take care.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. I've probably bored you to tears. You'll go up now and be like, oh my days.
Not at all. I'm just mesmerised. Fantastic. Have a brilliant day.
And you, Joe, thank you so much.
JoeTeams.com is a resource I have created to fulfill my mission to help 1 million veterans and business entrepreneurs like you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. JoeTeams.com is jam-packed full of valuable resources specifically designed to help you on your journey to success. Visit JoeTeams.com now to find out how you can join and start your journey to success immediately. That's JoeTeams.com, JoeTeams, JoeTeams.com. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day.